We're back to working on the Zombie Zipper Halloween Carnival project. In this section, we're going to be preparing all the pieces that we need for the ride. To start out with, we're going to be working on our images. This is the Transylvanian Bat Fangs image from the Poisons and Potions collage sheet. What I've done here is I've used a craft knife to cut around the part that says Transylvanian bat wings and remove that. Then on my computer I generated the zombie zipper, and in the instructions it tells what size I made it and what font I used if you're interested in that. And then I put that behind the cutout window and backed the entire image with black paper and cut it out. I did that twice because on the ride I want to have one on the back and one on the front. So that's the zombie zipper part. Then the next image was the 13th hour clock. I want to have two of these on the main zipper part on both the front and the back, so I cut out 4 of them and I sized them so that I could use a 2-inch paper punch. If you don't have a punch, you can just draw a circle and cut them out. I blacked them with black paper to give them a little stability because I think I'm going to use some pop dots to give them some dimension in the end. The last thing of the images was I cut out 12 ghosts of different size. Sometimes I flipped the images, and then I took, after the ghosts were cut out, I got some of the skinny popsicle sticks, and the filling that I'm going to use in my cauldrons is kind of an orange color, so I painted my popsicle sticks orange. Actually, I just used a Copic marker, and then I cut the sticks in half using my strong cutters, and there's no need to be precise about this because you're going to end up having to cut them a little bit shorter probably to go in the cauldrons. And then I glued the popsicle stick to the back side of this image and then put white paper on the back and cut out around the ghosts. And so what I ended up with was, I decided to cut out 12. I don't know if I'll use them all, but I ended up with 12 ghosts. Now if you want, now as I said, mine just have plain white on the back because they're supposed to be like their actual ghosts riding in the ride, so they wouldn't have 2 faces. But if you would prefer to have faces on the back, you can just flip the images horizontally, and then you'd have the ghost image on both the front and the back. So that's the image preparation. The next thing to work on is the cauldrons. And this is just a plain cauldron, and I used the copper gilder's paste. I'm sorry, it's kind of glaring in there. And I just opened it up and got an old rag that I have here and got a little bit on my rag and just kind of went around just to alleviate some of that solid black on there, just here and there, putting a little bit on the top edge. And then I especially hit the relief of this. There's the pot rings are there, so I put it on that ring to make it stand out. I think you could see that when I held it up close. So I just did that on all 6 cauldrons like that. Then, in order to make the cauldron swing, I want to add a washer to the handle. And I have found that you can easily pop these handles out. Just be careful that you don't tear the hole too big. And takes a little bit of, doesn't really take that much elbow grease, but probably because I'm using the pliers. And see, it has this thick knob on the end there that just pops into the hole. I don't know if you can see the hole right there. And then thread the washer on the handle, just so it's just loose on there. And then I'm just popping the handle back in the hole. So do that for all 6 cauldrons. The next thing are the large popsicle stick supports. Bring both. I painted mine. Well, actually, the popsicle sticks that I had, these are the large ones, had a variety of colors in them. They came in with a purple and an orange, and they had a green, but the green was a little bit too dark green, so I painted the green one to the color I wanted. You could, of course, paint them any color you want, use however you want to decorate them. And then you want to mark a hole 3/8 inch from one end, and then using the larger side of the Crop-A-Dile punch that hole. Now, I heard a little bit of cracking on a couple of them when I punched, so just be real easy, and then if you do get a crack, use a little bit of glue to fix it. We are going to be reinforcing that with a small round wheel, so it's not so critical, but of course you don't want it to crack. So you need a total of 12 popsicle sticks, and 8 of them will be the full length, the 6 inches, and then 4 of them you'll want to cut so that they are 4 1/4 inch longs. And I just used a craft knife to do that, just scoring multiple times. So that's the popsicle stick part. Now for the zipper, we need to cut some chipboard, and I use black chipboard, but I want to show you on just plain chipboard because I think it shows up easier in the screen. It's very important in this project to have the strength of the grain going in the direction that you want it to go, and chipboard has a grain, and I know this isn't, hopefully you can see that I'm on this direction. It's very easy for me to bend this. And on this direction, I'm using the same amount of force and I can hardly bend it at all. So we want to take advantage of that in this project to make sure that the length has the most stability that we can. So in the instructions I wrote that to make sure that you are cutting perpendicular to the bendable side. And what I mean by that is that if this is the bendable side this way, we want to cut this way. So that here's our line coming across this way, and this is the stiff side. So that these pieces and then the support pieces in the next section are always have that strength of the grain going for it. Now for the zipper, you're going to need 4 pieces of chipboard that are 2 3/4 by 8 inches long. And then what you want to do is, using a template or a compass, is to round both edges off. I just used a 2 3/4 inch circle template because I happen to have one, and I just put it on there, drew a line, and then cut that out. Now, one thing, if you're not familiar with cutting rounded shapes out of chipboard, it can be a little tricky. I learned this trick from Kathy Orta Files on Paper Phenomenon. If you cut first about 1/8 of an inch away from where your finished cut is and get rid of that excess chipboard, it'll be much easier to cut that rounded shape out. So I did that, and I have my 4 pieces here, and then I stacked them up, and I didn't talk about this tool, but you can either using this Prima distressing tool or a emery file, you may want to hold them up together and then just use that to, get some nice edges. That's, up to you. Yeah, it depends on how particular you are about those kinds of things. So after we've done that, the way this is going to go together is that each side of the zipper has an inside and an outside. So in my case, I want to use different paper on the inside and the outside. So I'm going to cover 2 of my pieces with the outside paper and 2 of them with the inside. And I've already done that in the interest of time here. The orange is my outside paper. But a key thing we want to do is to mark these what they are, and call them side A and side B. So in my case here, I'm going to call this side A, these 2 pieces. This will be the side A outside and the side A inside. And so I'm just going to mark them like that. Side A outside and side A inside. Obviously, you could just go A-O, not A-O, B, and then outside, and B and then inside. You don't have to write it all the way out. But that will become, when we're assembling this, that will be very important so that we keep things in the right order. Once we've done that, we want to mark the center hole and punch the center hole. It's centered both horizontally and vertically. One tool I did not mention, this is a 1/4 inch hole, and you can punch it, or I punch mine one at a time. I didn't have a way to drill them, and I used this We Are Memory Keepers 1/4 inch punch, which can go through the chipboard. If you open up this little door, you can see through the hole to see where to align your crosshairs for that. But if you have a way to drill, you could drill and keep it, because the key is to keep them all, those holes aligned. If you've got a drill and you can stack the pieces and drill that hole, all at once, wonderful. I didn't have that, so I used the tools that I had. And after that, we want to mark on one of the inside pieces. I'm going to do side A inside. Here it is. I'm going to use that to mark my template on. And just because I'm not going to have this to be such big writing, because my template is going to take up some space. The template is in the instructions, and it looks like this. This shows where we're going to place our popsicle sticks. I've cut some little notches here at the end of these lines so that I can easily take my chalk pencil, just go around and make all of these marks. Hopefully it's going through. The size a little bit. Not all my pieces are perfectly cut, but it will work. I'm not gonna, and I'm just checking to make sure that all of my tick marks got marked. Over here I can see that they didn't. Let me try that again. There we go, all of these. So it may be hard to see on camera, but all of my tick marks are marked. So I'm going to keep this template in front of me to reference, and then I'm going to just connect the dots on my template. I'm using my chalk pencil on this black, and one thing that you can do to keep your point sharper so you don't have to keep going back and sharpening it all the time on a pencil like this is to twirl the pencil as you're drawing. In a previous life I was an architectural drafter long before they had computer assisted drafting, and we did everything by hand, and that's one of the tricks I learned to keep my pencil point sharp, and it comes in handy. So I'm just drawing all these lines now. These two I don't have any way to connect it, but they are 90-degree perpendicular to these lines, and I think when I put the template on, I'll punch some holes here so that you'll have a way to reference, you know, where to join those lines to. But I'm just going to take I have a clear ruler here that I can see the through to mark this perpendicular lines on here. And I'll just finish up on this side. And then this will be, the last thing I want to do is I want to put my arrows on so that I know which way the popsicle sticks are going to extend. Once I've done that, the zipper sides are complete. Clean up a little. The next thing to work on are the side supports. Now, if you've been making Laura's Carnival and you've done the Ferris wheel, the way I'm doing the side supports is very similar to how Laura did hers. Again, when we cut out these side supports, we want to make sure that the grain is so that this is sturdy this way. You can see if I pick up this, it barely flexes that way. I'm going to stack this 3 pieces thick on each side. I think 3 is sufficient. If you think 2 is too flimsy, and I'm using what's called medium weight chipboard. It's graphics chipboard. It's kind of a standard weight. I would definitely use 3 pieces. If you feel that that's not sturdy enough, you could go up to 4, but you would have to adjust probably some of the measurements of the lengths of dowels and things if you did so. I cut a piece that is 4 by 12, and then I measured in on the top and the bottom. I'm looking to see how far I measured in. 1 inch on each side, and then I measured up 2 inches from the bottom and connected those lines and cut that out. I should say that before I cut that out, it's easier to get this hole centered, I think, before you make that cut. So if you measure in 2 inches, this is a center line here for this hole, 2 inches, and I needed as much space as the zipper. When it's turning, it needs a lot of vertical space, and working with the limitations of 12 inches of chipboard, I thought 5/8 of an inch down was a little too skimpy, and 3/4 was, I needed that extra space, so I made this whole 11/16 down from the top. So that's the 16th in between 5/8 and 3/4. So then after that, you've cut 6 of these pieces out. You want to cover again, I'm going to have a different paper on the inside and the outside, so the middle piece doesn't need any paper because obviously you don't see it. So this, I will make a sandwich now of these 3 pieces, the front, the middle, and the back. And I'll do that with very strong glue, clamp it together, and allow that to dry. Now, when I'm doing that, I will take my 1/4-inch dowel just to make sure that everything gets aligned and keep that in there, making sure I don't glue it in here. I don't want it glued in there, but that will help keep everything in a line here for that. So those are the 2 side support pieces. We're almost done with prep. Now we just have a little bit of painting and cutting the 5mm skewers. The skewer that started out, this long one that I showed you to begin with. My pieces are 4 1/8 inch long. I thought that was about the right length. Now that is dependent on the width of these little decorative pieces that are going on the outside of the popsicle sticks, so that when I need enough room, the cauldron will come in the middle. There's a popsicle stick on either side like this. This guy comes on the end of the stick here, so it's doing this kind of a thing. Let me use an orange stick, you can see better. So it has that kind of an action going on. So depending on how thick this wheel is, or whatever you use for a stopper, you may need to adjust the length of that stick there, so that there's enough clearance for the cauldron to swing freely, but you don't want it to get so wide that it becomes unstable. So anyway, mine, as I said, I cut to 4 1/8 inches long. That seems to be right. When we go to put it together, if there's an adjustment, then we'll make it then. So it's a minimum of 3 1/4 inches plus a thickness of 2 popsicle sticks plus a thickness of 2 of your pieces of the wheels. Now we paint these. I painted mine black. You can paint them any color you want. Painting the little wheels that go on that side. We have 2 of these wheels that need to be painted, and the 2 knobs that we're using to turn. All of those things need to be painted. And then the last step is to create some little, I'm calling them stoppers. When the cauldrons spin on the little piece of skewer, they tend to wander around on here if you don't have something that helps to corral them. And I'm just calling them stoppers. That nothing special about that name. And what I did was just I took some 1/2-inch squares of chipboard. I punched a hole, the large crocodile hole in the middle, and just used scissors to kind of roughly round them out. And so you need 12 of those, two for each cauldron. And that's the prep work. So next, when I come back, we will assemble the zombie zipper.